Hey, Successfuls. Jolene here. I have a question. Do you really know what could possibly be holding you back? I bet you didn't think it was your lack of focus. I know it's mine. We get further into that when we talk about the 1% rule by Tommy Baker.
This is the Success Through Community podcast. All right, so the book that I'm talking about right now is called The 1% Rule by Tommy Baker. And I'm going to be super honest, like you were last episode, and say I have not 100% finished this book yet. The main reason being because I'm listening to the audiobook, and every time I try to listen to it while I'm doing something else, he'll say something and I'm like, oh, I gotta write that down. So I keep having to go do the 30 seconds back so that I can get to my notebook, and catch it and write it down. Audiobooks are just not doing it for me. I just wish that books weren't so expensive, because I can't get a library book because then I can't write in it, which is the whole point of having the physical book. It's really a problem for me. So I'm gonna have to figure something out with that. But this book, I'm mostly done. I think I'm at the point where he's about to start talking about like clarity and vision, which I'm very curious to hear his take on it. But I've also done a lot of clarity and vision work myself, so I don't feel like I need it. I don't know. Famous last words, because we'll see what he says. I'll probably be like mind blown by something.
Oh yeah,
but
aha moments through the roof. So I have a
yeah.
question.
Yes.
So this is called the 1% rule. Is it kind of like the, James Clear and Atomic Habits,
Yes.
building on that 1%?
Yeah, 100% it is.
Okay.
1%, 100%. See what I did there?
Way to
that was
go.
totally unintentional. Yes, it is. And it's funny because he does use some phrases that are like identical, not identical. They are clearly his phrase and James's phrase were based off the same source material. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
And their books came out, I think, like the same year. Because I was doing some research on this because I was kind of curious when I started listening and it was like so similar to Atomic Habits. I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I wonder who was first. And so I did some research on it and it was kind of hard to tell, but I feel like they were probably writing it at the same exact time. One of them maybe came out before the other, but like not far enough in advance that like they copied from each other at all. Like they were very close. But
a mindset is a mindset, and learning how to do things like you cannot, what's the word? You cannot copyright an idea.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Absolutely. And they do come at it with slightly different approaches. And I was telling you this earlier, but it was funny because in the mastermind we recently had a session that was all about like habits of a successful solopreneur, which of course was my topic because I'm the habit queen. And I fully expected that all of what I had to say on that topic was going to be based on Atomic Habits. I was fully expecting that. But of course I was listening to this around the same time that I was coming up with what I was going to talk about. And there was a section of this book, and I hadn't even finished, like there would have been more that I would have been brought in, to be fair, if I had read through more of the book. But he's got his like 1% code, I think he calls it. Hang on, let me turn back in my million pages of notes. Yes, he calls it the code, but it's basically like his 1% code, where he's got like 5 steps that are like actionable steps. It's very similar to stuff that James says, but he kind of wrote it in like a little bit of a blueprinty kind of way.
Okay.
And so I ended up bringing that into what I was talking about in the mastermind, and like it went over so much better than I expected it to. So I was like, oh, okay, so this is good stuff. But I am not going to focus on the code for the episode because I feel like it's similar enough to Atomic Habits. We've kind of already talked about that. So if you're looking for how do I do this 1% improvement thing, go listen to that episode. Maybe we'll link it in the show notes or something to make that easier, but go listen to that one because we talked about it a little bit more there. What I want to focus on in this episode was his concept of focus and how he
Oh,
approaches focus. So there are quite a few little quotes and things that I have here from the book that I'm going to read, but I yeah, I was so inspired by, again, none of this was like necessarily brand new information, but
right.
I think that hearing the same things again but in a different season or in a different moment in our life can have such a different impact. So even though it wasn't like mind-blowing information, at the same time it was for me in that moment, because I was like, oh, I need to hear this right now, like really badly, even though I already knew it, you know?
Yeah, so I get that a lot with a lot of the books that I've been reading for this season and for last season. The message is there, and it's not something that we don't already know and not something we don't already live by, but to
Right.
hear it from another person's perspective and to hear it when you need it in that moment, it's when it can really drill home what you need to understand the message and what you need to shift and change to be able to live that message.
Yeah.
And it sounds like this 1% book had a different message at the right time for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like when he got into focus, he was talking about like what are the things that hold us back from success? And it's obviously, yes, there's a business focus here. Man, that word is just going to keep coming up out of my mouth, isn't it? But there's a business perspective on this book, but it applies across the board in my opinion. Um
Okay.
but this quote, it's a little bit longer, but bear with me for a second. But he's talking about like what is the number one thing, or what is it that stops us from achieving our goals, whatever they are. So this quote is, it's not the quality of our skills that stops us. It's not the quality of the information that stops us. It's not the know-how or the inspiration that stops us. Without a doubt, the number one obstacle standing between people and their dreams is a lack of focus. And I
Kind of
think
agree.
I 100% agree. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
we get so easily distracted.
Yeah.
And I say we because absolutely I do. I know we all do. It's we live in a distracted society. It's just the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the level of focusing and deep work, that's a phrase he's going to use a lot. So I'm just going to start it now. That he talks about in this chapter, I don't honestly know if I'm capable of. I'm going to be straight up honest about that, because this man has gone to such an extreme of setting boundaries and creating focus and this deep work concept that I'm just like, I don't even know if I want to do it to that degree.
Okay.
But
Do tell.
it's so effective for him, right? And I think
Yeah.
we can take this to the level that it makes sense for us and
Yeah.
still get so much out of it, right?
Yeah, I am so excited. You have no idea, Kelly, because I didn't really know that that's what the topic was going to be today.
Oh,
And
okay.
earlier this morning, when I was like, it's March now as we're recording this, I was working on, okay, shameless plug, I was working on what needs to be done for the business suite for the month of April
Mm-hmm.
and for Coach's Corner. And I decided on distraction was going to be my focus and how to kick it to the curb and to create a monthly focus planner. So you are
Oh man,
what we
I'm like,
said 5 seconds ago about needing to hear it when
uh-huh.
is the right time. This is my time. So speak.
All
I
right.
am all yours.
All right. Well, it's funny too, because in our last episode we were talking about a quote from Brendan Burchard.
Hmm.
His name always trips me up. I don't know why.
Mm,
Um that, and I will repeat it for anyone who maybe didn't listen to the last episode, but his quote was, our busy work isn't always our life's work, right?
right,
Well,
right.
something that Tommy said in here, and this is, we all know this is true, but sometimes we need it to be like written in huge letters somewhere in our office. Busy does not equal productive.
Hmm.
Amen. Can I get an amen? It's so
Amen,
true. In
sister. And
fact,
it is not a badge of honor. Yes, yes.
no. And honestly, I think busy sometimes is the like enemy of productivity. I think that
100%.
when you're so like busy in that busy mindset, that's when we get overwhelmed. That's when we feel like, I'm going to use a Phoebe word, that's when we feel floopy. Like we don't know what to do and we cannot make effective progress because we're so busy
Can I add,
versus being productive.
I think on top of that, one of the reasons why busy is so bad for us is because we have been plastered with the concept of multitasking, and doing multiple things at once is how you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get things done faster and be
Been
less
totally
busy. And it's so not
misproven.
true.
Yeah, it's been totally
It's, yeah,
disproven that that's such a
yeah.
myth, that nobody is actually good at multitasking.
Mm-hmm.
Because all that, and I mean, I say all this because I always considered myself the queen of multitasking, and I still fall into that trap. But
Mm.
when I stop and really look at it, I realize, well, multitasking just means that absolutely nothing got my actual attention.
Yes. There was
And that's
no,
the
what's the word of the day? Focus.
focus. There was no focus.
Yes.
So he gives
So,
you a couple of questions to ask yourself at the
okay.
end of the day. Okay. And this could be very helpful for your focus journal. Is that what you said? Focus journal?
Monthly focus planner.
Planner.
Yeah.
Focus planner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Planner.
So these questions are great. So at the end of a day, you typically feel like I was productive or I was not productive. I was busy. I was not busy. We know, like, if we got stuff done, right? Made progress.
Right.
But these three questions that are really kind of high level, simple questions to answer. But I think if we make it a habit to look at these questions and honestly answer these questions every day, we can slowly start to move to a more focused type of working without going to the massive extremes that he has gone to for his deep work
Mm.
process, because
Okay.
it is insane. But anyways, um the question number 1, did I really move the needle forward in my life and business today?
So important. What a good question to ask at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Did I
and I
move
mean,
forward?
why
Yeah.
don't we ask ourselves that question at the end of the
That
day?
that in itself is a good question.
Right? I mean, we don't, and I think we don't because we don't actually want to know the answer, because we already know the answer.
Yeah.
So, question
Yeah.
number 1 was that. Question number 2, which activities truly mattered and which could be deleted? Or in my like little slight tweak of that comment, instead of deleted, I put automated, because I feel
I
like
love it.
sometimes deleted, sure. Sometimes
Yeah.
subtracted, that was a waste of time, not
Hmm.
necessary.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's something that like is helpful for your business, but do you actually have to be present and paying
Hmm.
attention to it in order for it to happen? So, yeah, he didn't say automated at all, but I'm throwing that in there because I think that's a viable alternative to just deleting everything that, quote, doesn't matter.
Especially in today's business concept, right? When you're thinking of
Right.
the online business world, what can you automate? What do you not need to focus on?
Right. What
And
can
that is a
happen without
huge,
you? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 But there's not saying there isn't going to be time that you don't have to set aside for that task, but it can,
Right.
you want it to happen
But then
without you.
that answers the question, did I really move the needle forward in my life and business,
Mm,
with a yes, because
yes.
you spent that time automating something so that tomorrow you can focus on something more important.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So it
Hmm.
worked. But then question number 3, and this one's kind of an oof moment when you actually answer this question. He says this, and this is coming from more of a corporate mindset, but I think it still totally applies for us. So, question number 3 to ask yourself at the end of every day: was I moving myself forward or just other people's agenda?
Ooh, that is a oof
It's
question.
such an oof question, because
Oh,
especially when I think about my corporate world, like, I mean, I've almost stopped making a list of things to do that day because I know other people are going to come in and just plan my whole day for me by like
right.
sending me an email or quick little Teams chat or whatever. And
Mhm.
to that end, there was something, oh gosh, there was something I just wrote down from another chapter. Hang on, I'm going to find it because there's a whole chapter on like how to delete things from your life, from your
I
business.
love,
He's got
does
a
he
whole,
actually use the word delete?
yeah, he does. He has a whole, like, this is a later chapter, and maybe if we have time, I'll touch on this, but um, he has the 1% rule question.
Mm.
And it's like not so much on like evaluating your day, which is what we were just talking about, but this one is like at the beginning of the day, how to determine what you're going to do for that day, right?
Okay. Yep.
So
Yep. Makes sense.
you know what? I'll just read it right now because it's relevant in this moment, and I'll probably not get back to it if I don't. The 1% rule question. So this is your beginning of the day question. What can I execute on right now that will prove that my outcome and vision are not only possible but coming true?
Okay. That
It's a
that feels
really
very
good question.
corporate, but that is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
good question.
It's a very corporate question, but I think it's one of those aspects of corporate that as solopreneurs, we like don't address, but we need to. We absolutely need to. So I think that one was really important to me. But there was what is the did I not write it down? Did I actually not write down something? See, this is why I can't listen to books because he said something and it was like really important. Ugh, I didn't write it down.
You're killing me. So
Ah.
while you're doing that, that makes me think of like what I've been focusing on for this month in the membership. Wow, this is a Jolene Zetrick episode, I have to say. Uh, it's on how to sell every day. And one of the things that I kind of really wanted to push was what are your money makers?
Mm.
Why do we as
Income
solopreneurs and
producing activity.
entrepreneurs we're constantly working on things that are not bringing in money
Yep.
when we need to be working on the money makers and everything else has got to be kind of like a side thing that we focus on when it's not as,
Yeah.
prevalent.
Yeah.
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 Go, go.
Okay, so I found the quote. So it
Yeah.
was something that his mentor said, which is why I didn't see it because of the way I wrote it. But anyways, his mentor John DeMartini said this quote,
Okay.
and this one is like this is so just like hashtag truth, mic drop, whatever you want to say. Like it might even be the quote of this episode because it's so powerful. But the quote is if you don't fill your day with high priority items, others will fill your day with low priority items.
Oh, so true.
So
Why
true.
does this feel so familiar?
I don't know. Did you read this book?
I don't know, but I feel like recently I read something where it was constantly telling you and like for teams, for example, when you're working on your day, you're never going to get anything done because you're always available. And
Mm.
so other members of your company are they're going to reach out to you on Teams and want to do things. And it was, yeah, I can't remember the name of the book, but I remember now in that book, they talked about Shonda Rhimes, who we all know and love,
Mm-hmm.
and she actually has a rule in her office that if her door is closed, you're not allowed to come to her with a problem. You have to come to her with a solution. She is off limits. And the fact of the matter that if you have a solution to your problem, there is no point in interrupting her.
Right.
So
Yeah,
she
you've
is off
mentioned this in
limits.
a different episode, so I can't remember what brought it up, but
Yeah.
yeah, that did come up.
So
So I
yeah,
remember
like
you
other
saying that.
people will control your day because you're going to get
100%.
distracted and pulled. I love that.
Yeah. It's like so one of the things that he said is that he doesn't even look at email until 10 a.m. Now,
Oh, that feels so late. I'm not
that's
gonna
what I'm
lie.
saying. I'm like, okay, if this was just my business and my personal life and whatever, I think I could do it. But at work, I mean, I start my day at 7 a.m. I can't go 3 hours without looking at my email. I just can't. I mean,
See.
I mean, I guess I can. I'm making excuses. I can, but I feel like I'll miss something that's important. I don't know. I can't.
FOMO.
It's a scary, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
scary feeling to think of doing that. But, he was talking about, and I mentioned already, this concept of deep work, which I guess is a book by Callum Newport, which may end up being a future book because I'm very interested in this now. But essentially, deep work equals distraction free work. Okay.
Yeah.
And the ability to work in this kind of fashion, he says it makes you rare and valuable, and it leads to higher quality output and a higher sense of purpose and fulfillment. I can
Like
see all of
that.
that being true. Okay. I can 100% see all of that being true. Talks about how important boundaries are. And he's saying, and this, okay, so I'm going to go into this next thing that he said and just start by saying, this is going to offend some people. It offended me because it was true.
Okay.
because it was
Okay.
true. Okay. This is why it's going to offend you because it is so true. So he's talking about when we're talking about boundaries, I mean, there's always like outside, boundaries that, people that come in as distractions, family, whatever. And that can be annoying, but it's family and it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But he's talking about just like what you control of yourself. So he's talking about breaking smartphone addiction.
Oh gosh, you know how hard that is?
I know. And that's what I'm
But
saying.
so
I was
needed.
so offended by what he said were the costs of this addiction because I was like,
Mm.
oh, crud, you're right.
And you know what?
So,
It's almost embarrassing when it gets pointed out.
of
Like my husband
course.
points it out from time to time, and I'm just like, no. Well, you too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I know. I know. I mean, it's the kind of offended that sometimes I think we need to be because
yeah,
sometimes we need to hear it, right? So he says
yeah.
the cost of the addiction includes number one, lack of clarity. He says when
Hmm.
we stuff our brains 24/7 with information, it's a guaranteed way to add layers to the 50,000 thoughts we're already having every single day and to add
Yeah.
to our sense of not knowing where we're headed.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I really want to add to that too, because then it does really teach you how to not focus.
Yeah.
Because I learned, and it was a few years back, I realized that I couldn't finish a book simply because I couldn't focus on it. I just got
Mhm.
bored and I would change my book and then go straight to, Instagram or Facebook or any other thing that was that short, quick dopamine hit that you get on
Reels,
your phone.
shorts, TikToks. How often do
Yeah.
you watch a long form YouTube video versus how many shorts do you watch in a day?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
That I
Wow,
mean,
that's
and
a
I
kick in the pants, hey?
yeah, yeah, that was a big one. So then he also says that another cost is lack of completion, lack of fulfillment, lack of
Mm.
energy, and dreams not coming to fruition. And
Oh,
all of those things I was just like, stop being right because I
that
don't want to hear that right now. Like
sounds like a therapy session.
I really kind of was, and so
Yeah.
so he's saying replace that addiction to the smartphone, become addicted to the progress that you're achieving day in and day out. So he says set rules around focus. Now here's where he goes to an extreme that I'm like, okay, maybe if I did like a 1% improvement on this for about 5 or 10 years I could get to that point, but like I don't think I could go to the extreme that he goes to. But
Oh, do tell. What does he say?
well, I mean, because he like talks about he gets up at like 4 a.m. to write, like as he's writing the book, he's doing this. I don't know what he does at 4 a.m. now, but he would get up at 4 a.m. and the only light in the room would be like some candles and the screen. And he wouldn't have his phone and he wouldn't check anything. He would just write.
Okay.
And like that's a beautiful concept,
Yeah,
but I don't know how you like I
I
just
would be a zombie.
yeah, I just don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it.
Okay, so wait, I want to step back here. I used to be able to be that person,
Mhm.
that morning person. I think it really does depend on so many things because is he going to bed at 8 p.m. and
Well,
having a really good night's sleep that he is waking up nice, refreshed, and creative? Or but does he wake up and go through a meditation phase or work out and then get his brain awake and then right? Like, I mean,
yeah, he
I,
didn't
I
go
need to
that
know
deep.
more.
Yeah, he didn't go that deep into
Yeah,
it. But it's also not necessarily about the get up early. I think the reason he gets up early is because you reduce the other people distractions
distractions.
that early,
Yeah,
right? So like that's why he does
yeah,
it. But if your family, will leave you alone late at night, then stay up late and do it, right? Like I think
yeah.
you customize it to your reality. If you
Suit
are
your
not a
reality.
morning person, forcing yourself to get up at 4 a.m. is not going to make you more productive. It's just not.
Not gonna happen. And
So
that's it.
yeah.
That's 100%. My husband is up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
And I swear between that and 9 a.m. is his favorite time because
Yeah,
I'm
because it's so
sleeping.
quiet and he can focus on whatever. I mean, but I get that
Yeah.
because when I was working in an office and having to drive in horrible LA traffic, I was getting up at like 4 a.m. too because I had to
Ugh.
leave my house by 5:45. And if I wanted to
Oh
have
my
morning routine
goodness.
time, I would get up super early and do all that stuff. And I loved that time. It was so quiet, so peaceful. But now, ever
See,
since COVID and working from home, my commute is from the bedroom to my office, which
but
is
you
not
still need a
very far.
transition.
I
You
do still
still,
need a transition. But
yeah,
but now my husband gets up early to be with the dog so that I can sleep, which is
nice.
wonderful and I love him
Yeah.
for it. But I miss out on my quiet alone time. Now he gets
Hmm.
it. And I
Yeah.
do miss it. I do.
One of the things that, so Sal does not like to drive. It's not his most favorite thing in the world. And I can't blame him. I mean, we have the worst drivers in the world, and I'll explain why and how later, but it's been proven. But I love driving. And I love driving because that is my quiet time.
Hmm.
That is when I'm listening to my book or my podcasts or I am rocking out and did you know I sound exactly like Adele when I'm alone in the car? Darn
Don't
Skippy,
we
I
all?
do. Yep. It's for some reason I don't when Sal's with me, but hey, that's his ears are broken, not mine.
Of course.
But being in the car was my quiet time. It was,
Yeah.
and that's why I love road trips. Nobody can touch me. And that stems from a time of when I was always busy and I was constantly getting phone calls and emails, and it was always go, 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 go. The phone ended up in the glove box and I'd be on the road and I'd be like, nope,
Yeah.
I'm not, it's not that important that you can't reach me for 20 minutes. So I appreciate that so much
Hmm.
that it takes away all of those distractions. And it makes sense that if it's in the morning, there's nothing. But he is one strong person to be able to get up. But you know what? I think a lot of people are like this. So I'm just jealous, I guess. They're able to get up and do 2, 3 hours without reaching for those distractions because of
Right. Well,
that
and
phone addiction, right?
he does say he starts his day on airplane mode.
Oh,
Um,
that's
and he,
kind of smart.
yeah, and he also doesn't check email all day. Now, in my personal life, I don't either. But at
Hmm.
work, it's always up, right? And so if a
Yeah,
new email comes in and then it's an immediate distraction, even if it's a distraction to like if it's an automated email from some stupid system that I don't even need to pay attention to, it's already
yeah,
pulling my focus. So it doesn't matter that I don't switch and start doing something else. You've already broken my focus, right?
yeah,
So his thing is don't have your Outlook or whatever you work in with your email, don't have it open all day. Set specific times of day that you open it so that you can check it that way. And I was like, okay, I could try doing that. Like that would be hard, but I could try doing that. So I'm
I think
curious about that one.
I think when you're looking at it from a work perspective and not a self-employed business owner work perspective, but I have a job perspective, um, you would have to set the, I don't want to say
Expectation.
set the bar, but the expectations, thank you.
Yeah.
Set the expectations for those around you that, you know what, if you want to reach me, yes, please email me. I will respond when I look at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And if
Well,
you
one of
don't
the
hear from me
things
by then, don't come knocking on my door.
right. And one of the things that he does say is communicate your boundaries so that people know
Yeah.
what to expect, but then also follow through.
Oh,
That's the
that
hard
there's
part,
another
right?
tricky
We
one.
can
Yeah.
communicate that boundary, but if we don't stick to it, then they start to ignore it because we're
Yep.
ignoring it, right?
Doesn't matter. It's no longer a boundary, right?
Right. Right. So then he also says create ruthless boundaries is his like first step
Mm. Hmm.
around how to set rules around focus. His second rule is double your rate of saying no. That's a hard one,
Ooh,
but it's a good
that
one.
is a hard one. Yeah. That is so I can feel that in my bones because when I
Mhm.
first started my photography business, I had such a fear of FOMO, and brides, for some crazy reason, always tend to email and want quotes and to meet with you and all of that at crazy hours.
Yep.
So it's like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and a bride sends you an inquiry, and I would jump up nine,
Because you're
10 o'clock at
afraid
night,
someone else
drop
will
everything.
respond before you do,
Yep,
and they'll,
you're gonna,
yep.
and total FOMO. And it killed me. It was exhausting. And then it
Well,
was finally like, no, I'm
not
not,
only is
not
it
doing that anymore.
FOMO, but it's also devaluing yourself.
Mm.
Because the
And putting,
reality is they shouldn't hire the first photographer that responded to them. There should be
Absolutely.
more involved as far as like your portfolio and all of that. So recognizing and setting that boundary and saying, I don't have to jump up and grab them before somebody else gets them. I
Yep.
know that the quality of my work is enough to make them want to hire me if I'm the right fit for them. So
And that's
yes,
that
I will
imposter
respond.
syndrome.
Right. Like I will
Yeah,
respond in a timely manner. I'm not going to just ignore them for 3 days and then get back to them, but I will respond
exactly.
during my business hours.
Yeah, and it was that imposter syndrome, right? Like,
Mhm.
obviously, you are good enough that they are reaching out to you. They are coming to you.
That's right.
They want you. Therefore, don't ignore them. Do have good customer service, but do not neglect yourself or your boundaries.
Right.
You email them back the next morning, the next afternoon, whenever you get, check your emails, like whether it's at
Right.
6 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well, and
But
I
yeah,
think
it's
that concept of
definitely good.
saying no, like I originally read that as like saying no to opportunities, but also it's
Oh,
saying
no, no,
no to
no.
yourself.
Yeah.
But I mean, you should say no to some opportunities as well, because if they're not pushing your agenda, if they're pushing someone else's agenda, just because you get an opportunity, even if it's a good opportunity, it's that concept of what is it, saying no to good so that you have room for the great.
Mm,
Like
what?
sometimes you,
Could you repeat that? I've never heard that. I love that.
yeah,
Say it
yeah,
again.
say no to something good so that you have room for something great.
Oh my God. Where
Because
did
if we
you?
say yes to everything,
Yeah.
like it's not necessarily the right yes for us,
Mm-hmm.
Like, and for me, that's a huge one because as a tech coach, right, especially as I'm going to plug since you plugged, especially as I'm
Oh yeah.
launching my membership right now, right, where I have
Mm-hmm.
courses in there that are available to people to teach all these different tools. When somebody comes to me, and I think we talked about this when we were talking about unsold mindset, this is feeling vaguely familiar. But when somebody comes to me, or if I'm in a discovery or sales call with someone and they ask me, oh, do you have a course on XYZ? And in my mind, I'm thinking, crap, no, I don't. And they're not going to hire me because of it.
Mm,
Well, if it makes sense for me to eventually create a course for that, then I will. But like for me, okay, I am a huge Trello fanatic. We all know this. If you've known me for 2 seconds, you know that I love Trello. There are a million other productivity tools out there.
mm-hmm.
And if someone comes to me and says, oh, I love everything you're talking about, but I use Asana. Do you have any of these courses on Asana? Well, I could stop and create a bunch of things for Asana, but that's not my agenda. That's their agenda.
Yeah.
So it's an
100%.
opportunity to get a client. It's also an opportunity to potentially get a bunch of other Asana clients, but that's pushing their agenda, not mine. So that's saying no to something good to make room for something great.
I love that. Great example too.
Thank you. But
Yeah.
also we have to say no to ourselves in the example you were giving when a bride reaches out to you at 10
Mm-hmm.
o'clock at night. You have to say, no, Jolene, I'm not going to stop and answer this person right now because I know that they'll still be there tomorrow morning when it's my business hours. So
Yeah,
there's
and
two kinds of no's.
yeah, and the expectation for that kind of situation, the expectation is that people don't expect you to jump up at 10 o'clock at
No,
night,
they don't.
jump out of bed and answer their emails.
And
So
sometimes they feel
why
bad
did
when
we
you
feel that it
do.
was necessary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're people
Yeah.
pleasers. That's why.
Yeah. Ew.
But
Oh,
but they
yes.
feel bad when we do. They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's so late. I didn't think you'd get back to me this." And you're just like, "Yeah, I shouldn't have." But I did because I was being a people pleaser and I was trying to, I wasn't setting my boundaries or I wasn't holding to my boundaries. So then the third rule about this around setting rules around focus is commit to a practice. So basically, build
Yep.
a focus habit, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be able to go from zero to focused. We all know that. It's going to take
Yep.
time. You have to build into it. And he even says, that statistically, the average person is only productive 2 to 3 hours a day.
Oh,
So
I feel that in my
I
bones.
do too. I do too. So if you can really find that focused time for 2 to 3 hours a day, you can get so much done and then give everybody else their time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
he gave one resource for focus. I mean, I think he talked about that there were going to be more. I think they're in like a supplemental something or other that he offers. But the one that he mentioned in the book is something that you and I both practice regularly and we love it. So I'm going to bring it up because I think it's a great one. And it's just utilizing the Pomodoro technique.
Mm,
And if you don't know what the Pomodoro technique is, it's essentially setting a certain amount of work time and then scheduling a break and then more work time and then a break. And there are all kinds of tools to help you do this. There are free apps all over the place for
yep, yep,
Pomodoro timers and stuff like that. There are playlists on YouTube if you're
right.
someone that likes to listen to music or have white noise while you're working. But essentially, the reason I think that this works is that it creates those artificial deadlines that tend to give us that sense of urgency to get stuff done.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about this today, but we've talked about this a bunch of times that when we don't have a deadline, we our natural tendency is to procrastinate. We always think I'll do it later.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
when we
Even
have a
when we have
deadline,
soft deadlines,
yeah,
those
right,
soft ones, yeah,
right.
they tend to, and then next thing you know, you're up on the day you need to record and you're like, oh, I didn't read
I
my
didn't
book.
finish the book. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I always think about like when I used to work in an office and like you'd get to the last hour or maybe even 2 hours of the day and you're just like, oh, I'm so ready to get in that crappy traffic and go home.
Mhm.
And I used to kind of play this game with myself. This is before I even knew of the Pomodoro technique, but I used to give myself what I thought was a ridiculous goal of getting something done before the end of the day. Because by giving myself that goal, it automatically created this sense of urgency, this timeline of, oh my gosh, I have to get 50 blah, blah, blahs done, and I only have 2 hours. And all of a sudden,
Mm,
time just flies by,
yeah.
right? The same kind of concept happens here. We create that sense of urgency. Like we all have a tendency to be last minute people, anyways, right? And we thrive on that sense of panic and emergency. So create that for yourself. Use
Yeah.
something like this where, you're working for, I mean, Pomodoro, there's like different, you can do it at different frequencies. So, like, let's say you're doing like a 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you only have 25 minutes to finish writing your newsletter, that newsletter might take you days if you're just like doing it when you feel like it. But in that
And
25
it
minutes, you'll
can.
write like three of them
Yeah.
because
The
you're
only thing
just so much more focused.
I want to emphasize on this too. I want to make, because something I used to do before I knew about the Pomodoro was I would reward myself. But I want to make it very clear when you're doing this and you're looking into this kind of technique and trying to focus, it isn't, you don't punish yourself, such as, and I can pee when I'm done writing this newsletter. You know, those kind
Right.
of things. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Um, it's a reward system,
Yeah, it's
but
if you
it's a
don't
focus
reach your
system.
goal. Yeah, if you don't reach
It's
your goal and the timer goes off, it's not like, "Oh, I'm horrible." It's not
yeah,
about that.
it's you
Yeah.
5 minutes to just kind of refresh yourself, step away, go
Stand
have that
up.
bio break, have some water,
Yes.
shake it up. Yeah. And then get back to it for the next 20, 25 minutes. Now, I'm a huge Pomodoro person, and you know that.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite Pomodoro things is online, you can find ASMR, and I'm not a huge ASMR fan, don't get me wrong, but there are ASMR Pomodoro playlists that you can find.
Hmm.
And my favorite ones are the Harry Potter ones,
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah, I
course.
use those because I like to hear the
Yeah.
crackling fire and the pages turning
Yes,
and the
you're
the
in the
scritching,
Gryffindor room and you
yes, or the
hear,
library, and you hear like the
yeah, and you
scritching quills on the paper. Yes.
somebody just kind of slightly walks by, you hear that noise of someone coming walking by, and
Yep.
then on your break time, it starts playing music. So you know, like, oh, it
It's an
shifts your
audio
focus to the point
cue.
where it's
Yeah,
a cue. Exactly. And
that's
those
right.
are my favorite. And you can get them for anything. There are Lord of the Rings ones, there are video game ones, like they're all over the place
There
because
are
it is
Tech
such a
Savvy
big
Academy
thing.
ones, actually.
There are except that is
The
right.
study
I think
hall
I was
is
there
that
with
as
some of
well.
the recording ones that when we
Yes.
recorded them.
Yes, we have a few where there's some musical ones, there's some
Yeah.
I guess ASMR ones because it's like nature sounds and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
See,
yeah.
and that's just it. It's helping you pull in that focus. I have to have noise. And
Oh
actually
yeah,
I
me
wrote a
too.
newsletter about this. Because my husband likes silence. And that's another one of the reasons why he really likes his morning alone is because we share an office.
Yeah.
And I wake up and I sit down and Spotify it's like one of the first things I open,
Yes.
or my Pomodoro is one of the first things I open. So I need noise. And those are my cues. I need those audio cues to be able to focus because if I don't have something in the background going, then I'm not able to focus on something, because then when I hear something that's not supposed to be there, like the
It
door
distracts
open,
you.
or
Yep.
I get pulled out of it. So
Yeah,
I
it's
love
like
that.
our way of focusing through, like that kind of that level of ADHD that everybody seems to have these days, where
Hmm.
it's like we're so easily distracted by, to your point, every sound, every peripheral move. It's why I
Yeah.
set up my office so I'm facing the door, because I cannot have the possibility of someone coming up behind me.
Oh,
If I do,
thoughts.
I'm constantly turning around because I feel like someone's coming. It
Yeah.
was so hard for me. It's part of why I feel like I'm more productive working in my home office than I was in the office. Because in the office, I would put in earbuds so I could, to your point, listen to music, white noise, whatever. But then I couldn't really hear if someone was coming up behind me. So that I was just
Hmm.
like constantly convinced that they were. And it was so distracting. It drove me nuts. So I'm so much better here because I can control that environment to the point where I know if somebody's coming and I can see them straight on, no peripheral anything. So,
And that brings us back to his focus, the
mhm,
author, Tommy Baker, his focus at 4 o'clock in the morning.
right.
He's
Well, but
got control.
he
He's
talks
controlling
about
it.
priming your environment for focus. So, regardless of
Yeah.
like your time or whatever, like if you're like me and you need to change the direction of your office, like I'm not a feng shui person, but if you need to like face a certain way in order to feel comfortable, in order to feel secure, then do it. It's
Yeah.
only hurting you to fight that, that need, that
Yeah.
urgency. So just do it.
100%.
Just do it.
Oh,
So,
I love
anyways,
it.
this book is amazing. I mean, that was just one chapter, guys. That was one chapter that I was
Nice.
talking about. I could go on and on and on and on about this book because every chapter is like a whole different. I mean, they're so good. I have literally multiple pages of notes for every chapter in this book. So it's one that I mean, I recommend a lot of these books, but this one I feel like if you liked Atomic Habits, don't shy away from this book thinking, oh, it's just the same. It's not. It is, but it's not. If you didn't relate to Atomic Habits and it was like not your jam at all, then don't read this book because it's very similar and it's similar concepts and you're probably not going to like it. So, but I think this concept of the 1% improvement and, allowing ourselves to grow and progress incrementally as opposed to expecting massive change overnight is
Hmm.
so it's just a philosophy I love because I just think it's so much more realistic for most people and it's so much less overwhelming. And we're just overwhelmed by so much anyway. Like let's just make it
Yes.
a little easier on ourselves and allow ourselves to actually make that little bit of progress every day.
I love that.
If you guys want to connect with us on social media, Jolene, do you want to tell them how they can do that?
Sure. You can follow us on Instagram at Success Through Community, or join our free or paid communities over at Patreon, which is patreon.com/STC Productions.
The best way that you can support the podcast is to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening and leave us a review. That's the only way that new people will find and join our community. The Success Through Community podcast is hosted by Kelly Gable and Jolene Mills, and all episodes are solely the opinions of the respective host. Our sound production and editing is done by Kelly Gable, and all visual creative, including our logo, was created by Jolene Mills. The Success Through Community podcast is an STC production.